It's July 13th, 2022. I'm watching the Channel 7 news and they're talking about the airlines again. Now listen, I am not a disgruntled customer. Really, I'm not. I'm not going to be traveling. I have no money to travel. I don't know even if I had money who I would go visit or where I would go, honestly. It's not in my lifestyle at the moment. So I'm looking at this from a very concerned resident of New York with what I see going on in the local area, as well as what I see on the nightly news as far as updates of concerns, and what the local police have been up to. And through that discerning eye with children also on this island, thinking to myself, with this amount of crowd, how is my national security being protected? Where is the screening for terrorism? They have this many people, and the airlines seem to only care about getting as many seats booked and as many planes in the air, as many planes fueled up, and as many people movers transporting terrorists and vacationers. I mean, it's a global pollutant of moving biological entities that wreak havoc on other people's environments that they didn't necessarily invite in, but now there's some shuttle service opened. At the same time, by the way, New York is having a pandemic, which looks like an epidemic of something called a coronavirus, as well as monkeypox. It's really disgusting. Today they said that New York's turned into like the number 2 dirtiest city. I'm like, what a shocker with what keeps showing up and what keeps flying overhead. Flying used to be a privilege and for the privileged. How is it that all of these humans are able to move so easily and afford travel? I'm not even at a level where I could afford travel. How did they make it in the world to some monetary amount to buy tickets? Or who's buying their tickets to have them moved or transported all over the place, causing busy work and pollution on like epic scales? And what do they need to be moving so much for in like the USA and internationally? So now my question really is on my going back to my own national security. Um, who how are they screening these people? Like to let them into the United States. I mean, they're traveling domestically and internationally. And it seems like there's very little security work being done. I mean, it used to be you had to book your airline tickets way in ahead of time. You had a travel agent, you had some kind of verification, you then had to meet with your travel agent. I mean, like it was real prestige. Like it was elite. It was you thought you were somebody to get a seat on an airline. Now, it's like they're moving terrorist nations. I mean, they pack a suitcase, they come to visit. Who's getting them out if they don't want to leave? I'm just curious because New York seems to look a lot different than maybe even 20, 40 years ago. And I'm just wondering where the holes in my national security and my kids' future and my ability to survive went. And airport and airline abundance seems to be a real concern of mine, with all this people movement and all of this lack or lacks in security and securitizing. Like, I mean, I'm also having molecular security issues at the moment, but that goes to aerospace, not just the aviation award winners of like massive transit of what are they bringing in? I mean, like, how do you put the brakes on some of this stuff? Here's what it looks like.
New numbers today from the TSA. The agency says it's being hampered by a staffing shortage. The biggest challenge, also a potential security concern, is the need for more baggage screeners. Now, that position is understaffed, according to the TSA, by about 10%. Calls are going out to Congress tonight to boost wages and give raises in order to gain and retain staff.
I'm just checking out the crowd of what's able to afford airline tickets, since I don't have the same human ability, and why anyone at CEO level would agree for this much human trafficking without certain security protocols put in place. I mean, it seems like a really dangerous industry to not only invest in, but to perpetuate or encourage.
Other options include calling in volunteers from other office positions. The TSA says volunteers would handle non-screening functions like onboarding for new hires and management of security lines. Another airline is canceling flights because of overwhelming demand. Germany's Lufthansa has cut 2,000 flights out of Frankfurt and Munich this summer. Lufthansa says it's seen books go from 20% to more than 90% in just a matter of months, and its system just can't keep up. The airline says it regrets the cancellations, but that if it doesn't do this, its summer schedule will be overloaded.
Of course, flight cancellations and delays is something else we all need to navigate this summer. All week we've been documenting what many Americans have been calling the summer of struggles.
Yesterday we spoke about inflation. Tonight we are focusing on our air travel. Domestic flights are 45% higher than a year ago and 24% higher than the pre-pandemic summer of 2019.
Of course, salaries are not that much higher. Couple that with the cancellations, and air travel has become quite an adventure, and not a good kind of adventure. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Josh Heiniger.
Just when millions of Americans thought it was safe, finally, to take a vacation, they're encountering the summer travel season from hell.
I've been stuck in an airport, basically for 2 days.
Air travelers have experienced endless lines.
How are you possibly sitting there as a socially responsible individual at CEO level and telling me that you're processing all of these people around the globe daily in this highly volatile, toxic industry that you've all cultivated, and you're screening them properly? I can tell you by what's arriving in New York and the surrounding areas, if they say they're doing the right thing, they're lying through their teeth.
Thousands of cancellations and nonstop grief.
What we've got now is an industry that is stretched to the breaking point. And if something bad happens, it doesn't bend, it doesn't flex, it shatters.
The problems are complex, but industry analyst Henry Hartevelt says it's really quite simple to understand. Some airlines offered buyouts to huge swaths of their workforce to save cash during the pandemic, only to see demand for air travel take off faster than replacement workers could be hired. The result? Chaos.
We don't have enough pilots and the company is scheduling more flights than they can fly.
The pilots blame the airlines. The airlines blame the FAA.
One area where we really have challenges is the New York airspace, Newark in particular.
New York, yeah, let's blame it on us. Newark is New Jersey, but okay, New York airspace, because I don't really know how FAA important handles these things. I'm really concerned as something on the ground that can't get away. I don't have money, I don't have opportunity, I don't have any way of escaping the air pollution, the noise pollution, and the ground pollution of what you deliver in your human trafficking industry. It's been a really horrible existence here in New York, just in case anybody cares.
More flights scheduled in Newark, for example, than there is capacity at the airport, even in a perfect blue sky day. And air traffic control is understaffed, and because of that, there's just more flights than the airport can handle.
And if you're heading to Europe, just wait. Look at this mountain of misconnected bags at London Heathrow. That understaffed airport is so overrun by crowds, it's forcing airlines to reduce service. It's the same story in Amsterdam.
It's like a perfect scenario for the military to show up and just start doing their protect and serve job that they are so trained for in helping to clean up global terrorism and like biological terrorism. I mean, I'm looking at the amount, it's almost like having a salmon run and you being that big grizzly bear. You're like, oh my gosh, I picked the perfect spot. Uh-huh. So why isn't it happening?
And in Brussels, union troubles forced the cancellation of every single flight. Back at home, after a Memorial Day meltdown, U.S. carriers have now proactively canceled thousands of flights between now and August to allow a little slack into the system. Still,
It is going to take us months.
That man was one person with a wife and a stroller, and he had, like, his whole life he was carrying through that airport, like he was planning on rearranging and moving somewhere permanently or for a long time. Now, in tenants in common and what's arriving and leaving, where does liability like land in? We don't have agreements with a good portion of what you're transporting in and out. So what's the deal there?
At least another 6 months, maybe another 12, to get to a point where we can say we are through the worst of this problem.
Josh Einiger, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Again, all week here on Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock.
So that's what's going on in the airspace. Now, in more junk bonds, I mean, whatever bonded the humans into this 20th century from 19th century and bad ideas and whatnot, those mobile pollution units they call automobile industry, the New Yorkers are really unhappy about it. Just saying, I'm reporting from all sides. I mean, they have it on the news tonight. There's the office buildings are not at a rentable capacity that makes whatever engine is working inside of New York happy at numbers and stats on paper. But yet the amount of car traffic through the city, I really don't understand why they allow any cars in Manhattan. I mean, a couple of taxis, whatever. But wasn't the purpose of a metropolitan city to never, ever have air polluters? I mean, you need air polluters when you're going distance out towards the more suburban. But at urban night and urban levels, why is there so many cars and air polluters? on a daily basis. The numbers are just ridiculous. And you can't even blame it on people in the buildings because they're not there right now. Now, they're talking about it like it's some money-making scheme, like congestion pricing. But, like, stay focused here. The only thing I'm concerned about is the amount of traffic. What's going into their gas tank? What becomes a noxious combustible gas? Because is it all clean fuel? How would I know? They have all these additives at the stores, and like some of the population, I mean, like they're really questionable as far as ethics go. Like some of them just don't care. They walk around with guns, shooting people, knives, stabbing people. It's like, you want to talk Wild West? At times, it seems that way.
A new push this evening for congestion traffic prices for people driving below 60th Street in Manhattan. And the idea was approved years ago, but no specifics on how much drivers should pay and when they would start paying. Well, today, Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine
Where? Where are all of these people going? What is the purpose for them to have a vehicle and to get behind the wheel? And who dropped them off in New York?
unveiled his plan. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Sonia Rincon.
The plan to toll drivers in the city's central business district is taking a lot longer than expected, but the governor today insisted it's still on track.
We had a few federal barriers in the spring that set us backward. We had been on the schedule we anticipated. We worked through those.
The state-run MTA, which has the most to gain, has yet to appoint the Traffic Mobility Review Board that's supposed to figure out the particulars, saying the federal government's taking its time getting answers for it.
Again, isn't a driver's license a privilege to have a driver's license? Why are there so many issued? Why are there so many cars allowed? Why are they in Manhattan? At one point, wasn't there like carriage and horses only? I mean, when did the changeover come, and why was there not a daily quota of what's allowed to drive through or not? I mean, it's taking a real toll on the health, the air quality, and I mean, the pollutants and toxins. It's disgusting. It really is. I mean, it's one thing to like give some form of a social service, but like they've just taken it to such an extreme. They're totally abusing privileges. They just are.
Or environmental studies. In the meantime,
the car-centric status quo of our city is not working.
Transit advocates joined Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine in nudging officials to start nailing down.
And there's that thing, they throw out there that environmental study, but do they actually ever do it? I don't know.
Down specifics like peak and off-peak pricing.
We are calling for a variable pricing system that accounts for people who are entering, offer on peak, and also accounts for when they exit.
Congestion pricing would likely collect a toll here along 60th Street from drivers headed south. When the Traffic Mobility Review Board is finally seated, the borough president wants it to include a Manhattanite, someone who understands the potential impacts all over the borough.
And as the months go by, congestion isn't going anywhere. Levine says with Manhattan office buildings only back to around 40% of pre-pandemic capacity and congestion back to what it was.
We're going to have what some people call a carpocalypse on the streets of Midtown Manhattan. If we're already jam-packed when offices are not full, once they fill up, it's going to be impassable on the streets of the city.
In Midtown, Sonia Rincon, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Well, latest numbers.
Here's some more stuff that the airline human traffickers and then this automobile thing going on. What else has it brought in the 20th century? Oh, monkeypox concerns. Now there's epidemic issues, pandemic issues when it travels.
Outbreak continues to grow in New York, talking about the monkeypox virus, and virtually all the cases are in New York City. The state now has 359 cases, 336 of them in the 5 boroughs. Westchester County has 12. Today, the city's health commissioner apologizing for yesterday's crash of a computer that was booking appointments for vaccines.
Now they've just used the city as a money-making tool to poison, then intoxify, then frighten, then charge for, whether it be insurance company or the individual itself. Again, this organized crime ring, I see how it feeds itself. I'm just very concerned at the level of humanity that I'm living at and can't escape from. Now, I don't know how this person arrived. He's rolling around New York City on a city bike, which is something that they rent. I mean, like, again, it's so like Amsterdam, like I hear. I mean, I see it on somebody got to go there and filmed it and then whatever. But he's riding around on this city bike and on his shirt it says Innocence Project. I'm thinking it's false advertising. And then the next version of him, when the NYPD actually catches him, it says, I think, world's best papa. I'm like, again. Now, he was wanted in Tennessee, but somehow he got and was terrorizing New York. So here's how this one looks.
Video police released publicly. Investigators say Murphy.
So this is how I know that TSA and this airline industry and then the automobiles are in there somehow with their trucking and shipping and containment, and everything seems to be off rails. They sped up the world and lost control.
Launched a series of attacks over the past 8 days, fatally stabbing 1 person and injuring 2 others with his knife. He's also had several prior run-ins with the law.
This suspect should not have been on our streets. He was already convicted in Tennessee and given probation, which he violated. And he was wanted on an outstanding warrant for that violation.
New York cops here still.
And there's the t-shirt, world's best papa. I just don't understand over the last 20 years that I've been stuck here, but certainly after the last 40, since I arrived 43 years ago, who's taking responsibility for all this breaking that they've done? I mean, like, there's a mass casualty in totality on this one. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. Because without someone offering this opportunity, nothing would have been seized or taken. And life would have been held relatively harmless in the way that it already was, in order to deal with it without adding this explosive new measure of causing like massive chaos in multiple locations all at once. Like a massive outbreak almost.